Hide and seek in my son's hospital room. When I was little, my dad made me believe I could use the bathroom for him before going on trips or something. He would say, "Hey, I need to use the bathroom but I'm busy. Can you go for me?" After I use the bathroom he'll say thank you. Now I understand it all as a parent. I tried turning on the TV and it wouldn't turn on. I opened the remote and I'd find this. I'm surprised they remember anything, to be honest. What will you remember most about kindergarten? We did moth. Overheard on a school bus, Valentine's Day edition. 7-year-old boy, man I miss being single. 8-year-old boy, I have 16 girlfriends, 6 white and 10 bulk. 5-year-old boy, I used to have 3 girlfriends, but I dumped one. My son got overwhelmed on a math test, panicked, and decided to write this down and turn it in. First in school suspension followed. Not even the combined mind of 2 11-year-olds could figure this one out. A picture of me when I was 9 or 10. God, I was so cringe. Dear Tooth Fairy. Dear Tooth Fairy. Can I have $10 for this tooth? I put a lot of effort into it. Thank you. How my 10-year-old opened a gallon of milk. My Valentine's Day card from my son this year. To Daddy. Even though you're brown, you are still part of the family. Love, Fiam. Hide and seek. A 5-year-old boy jumped almost 40 feet out of a window like Spider-Man and survived the incident with barely a scratch. The youngster, who has not been named, suddenly leaped out of his 3rd-story flat's living room with an open umbrella, his mum said. Miraculously, he didn't break any bones in the fall, according to astonished medics at Croatia's Zagreb hospital, where he is now recovering. A neighbor said the boy told doctors he was trying to imitate Spider-Man when he jumped out of the window. His mum believes the brolly may have even saved his life, reports local Nova TV online news. She claims it could have slowed his descent and pulled him away from the apartment block's concrete path. Found my old diary last night and had a good laugh at how confident I was at spelling. Date, January 6, 1997. I like to go to Gemma's house, but I can't go to Gemma's. I know how to spell circle. Even I know how to spell square. Hide and seek with my nephew. I wasn't the sharpest, let's just say. So, when I was 8 years old, I was fascinated about hair dye, and I wanted to try it out. The problem was, I had annoying dangs in front of my forehead. So, the only logical thing my 8-year-old dumbass did was grab a pair of scissors. Yes, paper cutting scissors. And went to the bathroom in front of the mirror to cut my hair. So I ended up butting off my dangs unevenly. When I was done, I was proud of them. So proud, I showed them to my dad. I was only proud for 10 minutes. Then I started crying saying I don't like it. I wanted to show my mom my mistake, but she was at work. 3 hours later, she saw my dangs were cut off, so she decided to buzz cut my hair off to repair. Needless to say, I never tried cutting hair on my own ever again. Even I wanted to do it to dye my hair. When your daughter is still learning her lowercase b's and e's. Merry Christmas, baby. Love, Tony. The cat is in a dry place. Heck, the rain already stopped. I was willing to defend this theory to my parents. When I was 8, I used to think that babies were made by parents kissing, because at this point in time I understood that people had DNA, so I figured that when kissing, the saliva that mixed would mix the parents' DNA, and that was how the baby ended up in the mother's stomach. Dancing pony attacks small child. Pony 1. When you have a spinning dancing pony and you put it on your head, and before anyone says anything about having to cut it, it was so tangled that even after cutting it, I couldn't even physically pull that tangle apart. It was way too twisted. I even had to amputate the pony to get her hair out. Got this from my wife today about our toddler. Jack was whining, asking where his shadow was. I told him it was on the ground. He looked at it and started crying, saying that he doesn't want to. Someone in my class started stacking chairs in recess. This song was a danger. Why did 9-year-old me think jazz was another word for pass? Once asked my teacher after watching this if I could go for a jazz in the toilet. I still to this day lose sleep over thinking about it. Some writing from my younger self. Helping Mother Nature. Pollution is all around us, on land, in water, and in the air. At home, I help by not littering. At school, I can help by not putting poison in the air. When I was a kid, I thought swallowing fruit seeds would make them grow in your stomach. I was always scared of monsters being under my bed when I was little. But get this, I didn't even have a gap under my bed, yet I would still sleep with my parents. I've got a first grader on my school bus that passes himself every afternoon. He absolutely ducking refuses to use the bathroom at school before leaving, and then starts screaming that he has to use the bathroom about halfway to his home before inevitably passing all over his seat. Kids, man, are these types. If things an argument. My daughter used to be afraid of the school bathroom. The toilets had auto flush, and it freaked her out. After years of struggling with her fear, she finally got over it. Then she clogged the toilet at home and it overflowed. Now she has a fear of flushing and refuses to do it. Knew a kid in 3rd grade who refused to ask to go to the bathroom. If we were at lunch or recess, he'd go, no problem. But in class, he would never ask and would routinely end up passing himself in class. It got to the point where the teacher would just have to keep his eye on the kid for when he started fidgeting and then tell him to go to the bathroom. No matter how many the teacher said, just ask me, I'm going to say yes, the kid still refused to ask. My 8-year-old told me he had a girlfriend just last week. He said other boys in his class were telling her she's too good for him and trying to get them to break up. I'm like, dude, I do not remember this much drama when I was in the 2nd grade. And if anything, you're too good for her. But seriously, what is going on? Lol. The next day she decided she didn't like him anymore. So now my poor 8-year-old is single again. Life is hard as a kid. When I was a kid, I played hide and seek with a little kid. First time I found them easily enough behind a door. Second time I figuratively turned the house upside down. Couldn't find them. They were behind the exact same door. My daughter always hid so bad, and I would always make a dramatic "oh not here" kind of thing. So by the time she started looking, she would over dramatically look in the wrong places first, because she thought that's how you played the game, lol. My oldest sister lost her first 2 teeth by getting them pulled. It was horrible and traumatic. My dad felt bad, so the tooth fairy gave her $20. You better believe the tooth fairy had to live up to that standard for every tooth and kid to follow. There were 6 of us. When I was in elementary school, it was all the rage. I remember some kid snuck a bottle in his bag and showed all of us on the bus, and he was like a deity at that point. We all were giggling and laughing the entire day because he said he was gonna use it in recess. Kids are hilarious sometimes. I love to get into insult battles with my 4-year-old nephew. You smell like stinky toe jam, etc. The things he comes up with always involve the worst words he knows. Dart, peep, pee-pee, budges. All the big hitters. When I was about 13, I had a really wicked case of tonsillitis and was coughing up horrible green and brown chunks for 2 weeks. I got to the point where I was so sick that I was just coughing up these chunks and spitting them into a bottle because I couldn't go to the bathroom. When I got better, I realized I was left with a bottle of chunky green phlegm, and I knew it was too valuable to throw away. Where I'm from, we call it grog. The bottle is known as the bottle of grog. I sealed the bottle and stashed it in a cupboard. That was 10 years ago. To the best of my knowledge, it is still there. One day, I will find someone I hate enough, and I will go and find the bottle. My younger stepbrother pretended to be a plane and jumped off of a roof of a shed. He had his hands spread like wings. Then he hit the ground flat, but nothing happened. He wanted to do it again, if I remember right. I fell off the monkey bars in the first grade and had the wind knocked out of me. Unfortunately for me, the teachers saw it happen, and suddenly I was rushed off to the hospital, ambulance and all, just in case I had a broken neck or something. Recovery for me was getting ice cream and a stuffed bunny after a few x-rays and an annoying neck brace. So I'd assume recovery is similar for this kid, if he really barely had a scratch. Yes, kids are stupid. When I was like 6, me and my sister were tasked to clean our room. We shared the same room. Then my sister wasn't there, and she had left a bunch of Legos on the floor, and I ducking flushed the Legos down the toilet, like it was an everyday thing, and continued with my day. I begged for a short styled flapper type bob when I was about 4. The only picture is me hugging the tree I planted with my dad in our backyard and sobbing. I love that tree and it's the only thing that would comfort me in the aftermath of my bad hair. By the way, now when I look at the pic, I think I looked like a cute little Romulan Tasha baby. In the 2nd grade I told an Indian man my mom was going on a first date with. He looked like roast beef. He was kind enough to laugh it off, but I don't think there was ever a second date. Sad thing was, I love roast beef and just thought it was neat he looked different. I still remember his name, because that was neat too. He told me it meant the wind. When I was about 3 years old I once entered a bus with my mother when she saw a guy who was really big, width and height, sitting next to her unbelievable small and thin guy. My mother knew what was gonna happen, but it was already too late. As soon as my eyes caught them, I pointed at them and said, Mom, look, there is a man, and he is so big, sitting next to man, and he is so small. Do you see them? Can you see them? Look, everyone on the bus heard it. My mom died inside. Multiple times. I was just amazed about my discovery. Truly wonderful the mind of a child is. Once I was in the supermarket with my daughter who must have been about 3. We ran into a male friend of mine, and he and I started chatting. He does have quite a big belly. My daughter started tugging on his sleeve, so he knelt down to her level and she asked, "Do you have a baby in your tummy?" Being the gentleman he was, he replied no, because only ladies can have babies in their tummies. I was slightly embarrassed, but we kept chatting. She clearly required clarification, because she tugged on his sleeve until he knelt down again, only to have her ask, "So you're just fat then?" One day I was working with my boss. It was the end of the day, and he gets a call from his daughter asking if he can pick up his granddaughter kindergarten. She didn't say a lot of words. The most clearly, one word she couldn't seem to get a handle on was thanks. When she said it, it sounded like chinks. So after we pick her up, we stop at a convenience store to get some Gatorades. As we are walking into the store, she asks her grandpa if she could get some candy. He said yes. As we are walking through the doors of this Vietnamese owned store, she, being as polite as she can be and excited for candy, says, "Chinks paw paw, chinks." He immediately turned around, walked back to the van, and we never went back to that store again. Edited for spelling. When I was a toddler, my dad went to pick me up from my babysitter's house. She and her husband were black and we're white. Due to me being a toddler and not strong on language skills, I would pronounce sleepy time like CP time. When my dad picked me up, he was trying to be cute and told me it was CP time, as in nap time. My babysitter said, "What did you say?" My dad was confused until they explained that they thought he had said CP time, as in colored people time, which he was unaware was a derogatory thing. They realized it was a misunderstanding, but he still turned bright red and rushed out of there. At age 11, I had to do a biography on a celebrity and pretend to be them in a gallery. I chose Michael Jordan. When the day of the gallery arrived, I put on a basketball jersey, grabbed my portrait frame with notes on the back, and went to school excited for the special day. I got a bit irked when people didn't recognize me, the 4 feet tall pale kid, as Michael Jordan. "Oh, and who are you dressed up as today?" Had me thinking, wow, adults sure are dumb. I'm obviously Michael Jordan. When I was about 4 to 5, I asked one of parents' friends, "Why are you so fat?" He was really big. I remember it vividly because he told me it was rude to ask someone that, and I couldn't understand why it was rude. Looking back, I knew what the adjective fat was, but I didn't know it was a bad thing. So I was very confused as to why it was rude. Along the same lines, when my white nephew was about 4, his family moved to the Congo to be missionaries. I know, it's horrible. My sister emailed us and send one from him, so he would dictate what he wanted to say, and he would type it. He said, "I like Africa. I saw an elephant. I made a friend. His name is blank. He's black. He took a bath, but he's still black." Edit. Side note, since he was the missionary, my sister divorced his dad, who is now in jail for ripping his stepdaughter from when she was 14 to 16. When I was around 8, I was playing in the front yard when some older woman approached with some church pamphlets. They asked me if I could get my mom, and I ran inside to get her. She told me to tell them she wasn't home and to get inside. So I told them my mom says she's not home, looked at each other a bit annoyed and said, "Thank you sweetie," and walked off. I'll never forget it. My mom and I were out shopping once during the summer, and a child probably no older than 4 to 5 was absolutely transfixed by my mom. Quiet but staring very intensely. To cut down on the awkwardness, my mom smiled at them. The child smiled back, tugged on their mom's hand, pointed at my mom, and blurted out, "Mom, that lady's black." Every adult within the aisle was mortified. The child's mom apologized for them disrespecting our appearance and culture while practically running away. We are Korean Americans. Kids that young have no filter whatsoever, LMAO. When I was a child, I had a habit of always asking embarrassing questions to strangers who looked different because of recent incident. I'd gotten strict instructions by my embarrassed mother that if I saw anything unusual or strange that I wanted to ask questions about, I was just to point the person out to my mom, after which we could discuss it when we got home. The following day we were at the bakery and standing in line. It was crowded, like 20 to 25 people in there, when I spotted a hugely obese man behind of us in the queue. I then proceeded to walk up next to the man, yell for my mother to turn around, after which I pointed to the man next to me and loudly announced, "Mom, we have to talk about this man and how you can see his belly down below his shirt when we get home." According to my mom, it was a very quiet and very embarrassing 5 minutes before we were out of the bakery. I was about 9 or so, and we were driving from our home in California to visit family in Minnesota. We had spent the night in Salt Lake City, Utah. Got up in the morning and found a place to have breakfast. As we were driving out of town, I told my dad I found his money. He looked surprised and asked me what I meant. I held out my hand with a couple dollar bills and some change and proudly said, "You left this on the table." Both him and my mom looked sort of embarrassed, and then he said, "I guess we can never go there again." Then they explained to me that the money was supposed to stay on the table for the waitress as a tip. Needless to say, I learned my lesson that day. My dad loves to tell the story of when I was about 3 or 4. He took me to the hardware store one day for some parts or some shut, real old Timmy type place with saloon doors that led to the back area. Anyway, as my dad was checking out at the counter, I sauntered over to the saloon doors and took a glance under them, and I saw one of the workers. I don't remember what the guy looked like, but I apparently just screamed, "Boy, you're fat. You're fatter than Fat Albert." The entire store fell silent, and my dad picked me up and trotted toward the door. 1985. When I was 4, our neighbors across the street had company over on a day that was so nice that we had the living room window open. An older married couple and their 2 adult daughters got out of their car and walked up to the neighbor's house. I was so shocked by their enormity that I laughed. "Look at those big fat aces." They stopped, looked around, and the man yelled, "Who the duck said that?" Mom was on the front porch with her light lunch and, most likely, a tap, so he ran/waddled over to her thinking this slender young woman was who said it. I panicked and ran out the back door, jumped the fence, and hauled ace to my grandma's. When grandma drove me back home, The cops were there because our uncle pushed my mom to the ground. He went to jail and I got 2 hours of time out for each night of the next week and I wasn't allowed to watch She-Ra for a month. My youngest was about 3 or 4 and was at the DMV with me. A young man came in wearing baggy pants with the top of his boxers peeking out. My son loudly asked me if the young man knew about belts and asked me if he should tell him how belts work. I was mortified. The young man looked embarrassed and hitched his pants up a little. I tried apologizing and later had a talk with my son about it being impolite to talk about how other people are dressed. When I was little I saw a commercial for an acne treatment which involved a short of a bully calling his classmate pizza face. I didn't know it was bad. I don't know how children's brains work. But the next day I called my mom pizza face. Also once my mom was picking up my preteen self from a group hangout. All my friends were outside talking and from the car window my little sister, 5, yelled my sister darts. Not that bad, but for a 12-year-old it was excruciatingly embarrassing. When I was 18 months or so old, I drank some cleaning fluid and had to go to the hospital. Somehow I got it in my head that I did that when I was 18 years old and died and was reborn. My parents corrected me when I told a waitress this fact. I thought that there was a sock for the left foot and another for the right one, like shoes. So every time I was to put my socks, I asked my father which one was in which foot. And the son of a butch of my father sometimes made me change the sides of them. My parents were both nurses, and when I was about 6 or 7, I asked what happened if someone lied about being sick and the doctors found out. I was just beginning to try and fake my way into missing school for cartoons, and logically thought of the worst case scenario. They said they cultured you/made you sick. I believed this for the next 4 or 5 years.